Good morning, everybody. For you, it's Holy Saturday. For me, it's Good Friday. I'm doing the 3 videos all at once. And I'm down here in my shop. And the reason I'm in my shop, one is that it's just not the nicest day out. And B, Holy Saturday is kind of about taking a breather and being in limbo. And so we're down here in the place where I take a breather. A few of you have been curious about my shop, so, here we are. And this has moved. The people that have been to my house remember when it was in the front room, but, it's funny when you get married and you're living with someone else in the house, entering the front door and into a shop is not high on the priority list. So I've moved things, and I'm in a room that is more fitting of a shop, and I can close the door on all the dust and the mess, and every visitor that comes in doesn't see it. But anyway, this is where we are, and like I said, we're talking about taking a breather. The scripture passage is, I'm going to go to Matthew because we've got 2 options for scripture today. One is Matthew and one is one is Matthew and one is John, and we actually read the John passage yesterday. It's part of the whole long Good Friday saga, and so I thought we'd just simply read the same story from Matthew just for a change in voice. And it's Matthew 27, it's the second last chapter of Matthew, 57 to 66. Very similar, a couple of details have changed, but very similar. And you can pause the video and go read that if you haven't. There's a link below, or you can read it in your home Bible. So Matthew 27, 57 to 66. So, this story is interesting for 2 reasons. One is that it is taking a breather. The other is that it is sort of the last people that you'd expect that are protagonists in this story. Jesus has died, obviously, because they're dealing with his body. And where are the disciples? Where are Jesus' followers? Where are the crowds? They're gone. The first character we have is Joseph of Arimathea. And I want to be very careful with what I say here. If you are wealthy, there's going to be less inclination to follow Jesus' way. Is that right? I hope I haven't. The point is, there were and have been some extremely strong, wealthy Christians, and there even were in these days. Well, they're still Jewish in those days, but wealthy supporters of Jesus. But if you can do it yourself, and if life is good, you're less inclined to want to change things. And I'm not saying you're not inclined, I'm just saying you're less inclined. You can rely on yourself more. And so it's very interesting that Joseph of Arimathea shows up and is the one to make arrangements for laying Jesus' body to rest. By all accounts, Joseph of Arimathea is a good man and to be celebrated, and that's fantastic. But I think it's very interesting that, Jesus, who was champion of the poor and the downtrodden and all these things, and these were the people that followed him, it's Joseph of Arimathea that shows up. The second character is Pilate. And this should come as no surprise to us because, I've been going on and on about how we vilify Pilate, and maybe we shouldn't. Pilate was certainly a negative character in that he pulled the trigger, but he's a bureaucrat basically, that had to make a decision. And the way Rome did things was you avoided revolt, and you kept the peace. And he tried every trick in the book to set Jesus free. And, had he set Jesus free, the crowd would have gone crazy. So, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He was trying to help. To a degree. He wasn't a follower, though there's rumor that his wife was. But yeah, he was helping. here. He gave Joseph of Arimathea what Joseph wanted. If you read the Matthew version, Nicodemus also turns up, and Nicodemus was a Pharisee. He was a follower of Jesus, a secret follower of Jesus, but he was a Pharisee too. I love that we've got Nicodemus following Jesus, because that just shows that it's a more complicated climate than we give it credit for. So a Pharisee of all people, according to John, shows up and helps. And then we've got Mary Magdalene and Martha. Mary Magdalene and Mary, Jesus' mother. I think it just said Mary, but I'm assuming Jesus' mother. And the other Mary. Anyway. And they're at the tomb. And, we don't give women enough credit in the Bible. The church, for whatever reason, has been known for patriarchy and, not supporting anyway. But it's always the women that know first, and it's always the women that have their finger on the pulse in the Bible. If you read even the Old Testament stories, the men are the decisive leaders, but the women are the ones that understand what's happening, which we don't give enough credit to that. Where are the disciples? Where are the crowds? Where's everyone else? The last people we would have expected are the ones carrying the story forward. I think that's very interesting. And I always say that as Christians, we need to be looking for sort of a professor of mine used to say, call it the upside down surprise. Often as Christians, because we sort of become known as the keepers of the tradition. So we like to protect tradition. But we are the ones that are supposed to be open to where God's calling us, and recognize that may not be where we expect to be called. So we've got these people, the least that we would expect, that are moving the story forward. And I think that's a message in itself that is very in line with everything we've been experiencing this week through this roller coaster. The other thing that sticks out to me about this passage is what happened during the 3 days. Jesus was dead for 3 days. And, what were those 3 days like? We were on this tremendous upswing as we entered Jerusalem, and we kind of plateaued before Maundy, Thursday, and then Jesus was betrayed, arrested, and crucified. We start on a high, and then we fall to the pit. And then we stay there for a few days. That's powerful. I think just any Holy Week, it's good to just recognize that we're here for a few days, and sometimes you just need to sit and wait and do the practical things. But as a global culture, we are all sitting and waiting right now. And I think this story tells us that might be okay. And to look in the places that we least expect to see where the story is moving forward. Anyway, I'm going to leave you there, and we'll see you in the morning. Amen.